The salvage ship Lucky Strike drifted through the debris field like a metal scavenger, picking through bones. Captain Maria Santos watched her scanner screens with tired eyes, searching for anything valuable among the twisted wreckage of what had once been a massive space battle. Her crew of 12 had been working this particular graveyard for 3 weeks now, and the pickings were getting slim. "Captain, I'm reading something weird about 2 clicks off our starboard bow," called out Jake Morrison, her sensor operator. His voice carried that edge of excitement that came with finding something potentially profitable. Maria floated over to his station, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal deck plating. The Lucky Strike was an old converted mining vessel, all function and no form. Every surface was scratched, dented, or patched with welding scars. It wasn't pretty, but it kept them alive in the cold vacuum of space. "What kind of weird?" Maria asked, peering at the scanner display. She saw a faint blip on the edge of their detection range, partially hidden behind a massive chunk of destroyed battlecruiser hull. "It's big, Captain. Really big. And the metal composition is strange. Not matching anything in our databases." Jake adjusted his controls, trying to get a clearer reading. "Whatever it is, it's been here a long time. The energy signature is almost dead, but there's still something active inside." Maria felt her pulse quicken. In the salvage business, finding something that wasn't in the databases meant one of 2 things. Either it was worthless junk from some unknown civilization, or it was a treasure that could set them up for life. Given their current financial situation, she was willing to take the gamble. "Set course for that contact. Keep the scanners running full sweep. I want to know if we're heading toward a derelict or a trap." The Lucky Strike changed direction, her thrusters firing in short, controlled bursts. Through the main viewport, Maria could see the debris field stretching out in all directions. This had been the site of the Battle of Kepler 442, where the human colonial defense force had made their last stand against the Zephyrian Empire 3 years ago. The humans had lost badly, and most of their fleet had been reduced to scrap metal floating in space. As they got closer to the contact, the shape began to resolve on their screens. Maria felt her breath catch in her throat. Whatever this thing was, it was enormous. Easily 3 times the size of the largest human battleship she'd ever seen, and built like nothing in any military database. "Captain," Jake's voice was barely above a whisper, "I'm reading the hull composition now. This thing, it's human-built." "That's impossible," said Elena Vasquez, their engineer, floating up from the engine compartment. "Humans never built anything that big. Our largest ships were maybe 800 meters. This thing is over 2 kilometers long." Maria stared at the massive shape growing larger on their screens. The hull was dark gray, almost black, with strange angular lines that seemed to bend light around them. It looked ancient, like it had been floating here far longer than the 3 years since the battle. Strange symbols were carved into the hull plating, symbols that looked almost human, but not quite right. "Jake, are you absolutely sure about those readings?" Maria asked. "I've run the scan 3 times, Captain. The hull alloys are definitely human manufacture, but they're using techniques I've never seen before. And, Captain, there are weapon ports all along the hull. Hundreds of them." As the Lucky Strike moved closer, they could see the massive ship more clearly through their viewport. It was shaped like a giant spear point, with angular armor plating that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The front section was heavily armored, with what looked like massive cannon barrels protruding from hidden recesses. The middle section was covered in smaller weapon emplacements, and the rear had enormous engine nozzles that could probably accelerate something that sized faster than most frigates. "Captain, I'm picking up a faint power signature," Elena reported, checking her instruments. "Whatever's inside that thing, it's still running on backup power after all this time." "Any signs of life?" Maria asked. "Negative, but the computer systems appear to be intact. There's some kind of automated beacon transmitting on a very old human military frequency." Maria made her decision. "Prep the docking shuttle. Elena, Jake, you're with me. The rest of the crew stays here and keeps watch. If this thing is what I think it might be, we're about to become very rich or very dead." 20 minutes later, Their small shuttle approached the massive hull of the mysterious ship. Up close, it was even more intimidating. The armor plating was seamless, like it had been grown rather than built. Strange crystalline structures jutted out from various points along the hull, and Maria could swear she saw faint energy patterns flickering beneath the surface. There, Elena pointed at a section of the hull where a docking port was barely visible. Looks like standard human configuration, just bigger. The docking procedure went smoothly, which surprised Maria. Usually, derelict ships had damaged or incompatible docking systems. This one seemed to recognize their shuttle and automatically adjusted its port to match their configuration. As they cycled through the airlock, Maria felt gravity kick in. That was the first sign that this wasn't an ordinary derelict. Gravity generators required massive amounts of power, and most abandoned ships lost gravity within hours of being disabled. The corridor they entered was huge, easily 3 times the height of a normal human ship's passageway. Emergency lighting cast eerie red shadows along the walls, which were covered in the same strange symbols they'd seen on the outer hull. The air was breathable, but stale, like it had been recycling for years without fresh input. "This place gives me the creeps," Jake muttered, adjusting his scanner. "I'm reading multiple power sources throughout the ship, but they're all running at minimal levels." "The architecture is definitely human," Elena observed, running her hand along one of the walls. "But it's like humans built this thing 100 years in the future. The materials, the construction techniques, this is way beyond anything in current tech." They made their way deeper into the ship, following the main corridor toward what appeared to be the bridge section. Along the way, they passed sealed compartments with transparent aluminum viewing ports. Through the ports, they could see rows of what looked like weapons and equipment, all perfectly preserved and waiting. "Captain," Jake's voice was tight with excitement. "You need to see this." He was standing in front of a large viewing port, staring at something inside. Maria joined him and felt her jaw drop. The compartment beyond was filled with power armor suits, but not like any she'd ever seen. These were massive, easily twice the size of standard combat armor, with weapon systems that looked like they belonged on small spacecraft rather than individual soldiers. "Those aren't normal power armor suits," Elena breathed. "Look at the energy readings. Each one of those suits is putting out enough power to run our entire ship." As they continued toward the bridge, they began to encounter more evidence of the ship's incredible capabilities. They passed armories filled with weapons that hummed with contained energy, engineering sections with technology that seemed to bend the laws of physics, and computer cores that were still processing data after years of abandonment. Finally, they reached the bridge. The doors were massive, easily 4 meters tall and 2 meters wide. As they approached, the doors began to open automatically, revealing the command center beyond. The bridge was enormous, with crew stations arranged in a complex pattern around a central command chair. Every surface was covered in displays showing various ship systems, all of which appear to be functioning normally despite the lack of crew. In the center of it all, a holographic display showed their current position in space, along with tactical information about the surrounding debris field. Maria approached the central command chair carefully. As she got close, a gentle female voice began speaking in clear, unaccented English. "Welcome aboard the UES Prometheus. I'm the ship's artificial intelligence, designation Athena. I have been waiting for authorized personnel to arrive for 3 years, 215 days, 14 hours, and 37 minutes. Maria nearly jumped out of her skin. "You're still active?" "Affirmative. All primary systems remain operational, though I have been running on minimal power to conserve resources. I have been monitoring local communications and am aware of the current tactical situation regarding the Zephyrian Empire's occupation of this sector." Jake was running his scanner over everything, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Captain, the technology readings I'm getting. This ship is impossible. The power cores alone are producing more energy than a small star." "Athena," Maria said carefully, "what exactly is the UES Prometheus?" The Prometheus is a prototype battleship, the first and only ship of her class. She was designed and constructed by the Advanced Defense Initiative as part of Project Titan, a classified program to develop next-generation military technology for the defense of human space. Elena was examining one of the crew stations. When was this ship built? Construction began 15 years ago and was completed 8 years ago. The Prometheus was intended to be the first in a new class of super battleships capable of engaging multiple enemy fleets simultaneously. 8 years ago, Maria felt confused. But our records don't show any ship construction projects of this magnitude. Something this big couldn't be built in secret. The Advanced Defense Initiative operated under the highest levels of classification. All records of Project Titan were sealed or destroyed when the project was terminated 5 years ago. The Prometheus was moved to this location for long-term storage and evaluation. Jake looked up from his scanner. Captain, if this ship was completed 8 years ago, why wasn't it used during the war? We lost every major engagement with the Zephyrians. This thing could have changed everything. Athena's response sent chills down Maria's spine. Political considerations prevented the Prometheus from being deployed. Military leadership deemed the ship's capabilities too dangerous for active service. The project was classified as a failure, and the ship was ordered to remain in standby mode indefinitely. Maria felt anger building in her chest. Humanity had lost the war because they couldn't match the Zephyrians' superior technology and numbers. Entire colonies had been destroyed, billions of people killed or enslaved, and all the while this incredible weapon had been sitting and used in a storage orbit. Athena, what are the ship's current capabilities? All weapon systems are operational and fully charged. Defensive systems are at full readiness. Propulsion systems are functioning within normal parameters. The Prometheus is ready for immediate deployment upon authorization from qualified command personnel. Maria looked at her small crew, then back at the massive bridge around them. An idea was forming in her mind, an idea that was probably insane, but might be their only chance at revenge against the empire that had destroyed their homes. Athena, what constitutes qualified command personnel? Any officer with the rank of captain or above in the Human Colonial Defense Force, or any civilian with emergency authorization codes issued by the Defense Ministry. Maria reached into her jacket and pulled out her old military identification. She'd been a captain in the HCDF before the war ended, and she turned to salvage work. Her rank had never been officially revoked, just made irrelevant when the human government surrendered. Captain Maria Santos, Human Colonial Defense Force, service number 7749, Delta, X-ray. I hereby assume command of the UES Prometheus under emergency military authority. The bridge suddenly came alive with light and sound as every system activated simultaneously. Athena's voice took on a more formal tone. Command authority recognized and accepted. Welcome aboard, Captain Santos. The UES Prometheus is now under your command. What are your orders? Maria looked around the bridge at her tiny crew, then out at the debris field where so many good people had died fighting an impossible war. The Zephyrian Empire thought they had broken humanity's spirit. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Athena, I want a full tactical analysis of current Zephyrian fleet positions in this sector, and begin charging all weapon systems. We're going hunting. The next 48 hours aboard the UES Prometheus were the most intense of Maria's life. Athena had downloaded years' worth of tactical data directly into the ship's systems, giving them a complete picture of Zephyrian fleet movements throughout the sector. What they learned was both encouraging and terrifying. Captain, Jake called from his new position at the sensor station. Athena's analysis shows 3 major Zephyrian task forces operating in this area. The smallest one has 12 ships, including 2 battlecruisers. Maria stood at the center of the massive bridge, still getting used to the scale of everything around her. The command chair was designed for someone much larger than her, but Athena had adjusted it to fit her perfectly. Holographic displays showed tactical information in 3 dimensions around her, giving her a god's-eye view of local space. "What about our own capabilities, Athena?" Maria asked. "All primary weapon systems are now fully charged and operational. The Prometheus carries 48 quantum torpedo launchers, 72 plasma beam arrays, and 36 graviton pulse cannons. Additionally, we have defensive systems including adaptive armor plating, quantum shields, and a temporal displacement field generator." Elena, who had taken over the engineering station, whistled softly. "Captain, I'm looking at these power readings, and they don't make sense. This ship is producing more energy than should be physically possible. The reactor design is completely beyond anything I've seen. The Prometheus utilizes a controlled singularity reactor," Athena explained. "The power source is an artificially contained black hole approximately the size of a golf ball. It provides virtually unlimited energy for all ship systems." "A black hole?" Jake's voice cracked slightly. "We're flying around with a black hole inside our ship?" "The containment system has multiple redundancies and has been tested extensively. There is no danger to the crew under normal operating conditions." Maria tried to wrap her head around the concept. They were standing on a ship powered by a controlled black hole, armed with weapons that could probably destroy planets, and equipped with technology that seemed like magic. The Zephyrians had conquered humanity using superior numbers and conventional energy weapons. They had no idea what was coming for them. "Athena, I want to test our systems before we engage any enemy forces. Is there a safe way to do that?" "Affirmative. I have identified several large asteroids in the outer system that would serve as suitable targets for weapons testing. Additionally, there is a derelict Zephyrian destroyer approximately 6 light hours from our current position that appears to have been abandoned after suffering battle damage." "Perfect. Set course for the derelict destroyer. We'll use it for target practice." The journey to the abandoned Zephyrian ship gave Maria time to explore more of the Prometheus. The ship was enormous, with over 30 decks and enough space to house a crew of 5,000. Most compartments were empty now, designed for a crew that had never been assigned to serve aboard her. As they moved through the ship, Athena provided a running commentary on various systems and capabilities. The medical bay was equipped with technology that could regenerate lost limbs and cure most known diseases. The armory contained enough weapons to outfit a small army, including power armor suits that could let a single soldier take on an entire platoon of enemies. The ship's laboratories contained research equipment that was decades ahead of anything Maria had seen, and the manufacturing bays could produce almost any component or weapon the ship might need during extended operations. It was like someone had tried to build an entire civilization into a single vessel. "Athena," Maria asked as they toured the ship's hydroponic gardens, "who designed all this? This level of technology seems impossible." The Prometheus was designed by Dr. Elizabeth Chun and her team at the Advanced Defense Initiative. Dr. Chun was a theoretical physicist who made several breakthrough discoveries in quantum mechanics and temporal physics. Her work formed the basis for most of the ship's advanced systems. What happened to her? Dr. Chun and her entire research team died in a laboratory accident during the final stages of the project. Official records indicate it was a reactor containment failure, but I have access to classified files that suggest the accident may have been deliberately caused. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. Sabotage. There were political factions within the human government who believed the Prometheus project was too dangerous. They feared that the ship's capabilities could lead to an arms race that would destabilize human space. It is possible that these factions arranged for the project to be terminated permanently. Elena, who was listening nearby, shook her head in disgust. So they killed the scientists and hid the ship rather than use it to defend humanity. No wonder we lost the war. 3 hours later, they reached the derelict Zephyrian destroyer. It was a typical Empire ship, about 400 meters long with a distinctive curved hull design that all Zephyrian vessels shared. Battle damage was visible along its port side, and it was venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Target acquired, Athena announced. Weapons systems standing by. Maria settled into the command chair and brought up the targeting display. The holographic interface was intuitive, allowing her to select weapons and target specific areas of the enemy ship with simple gestures. Let's start with something small. Fire one quantum torpedo at the destroyer's engine section. Torpedo away. Maria watched the display as a single projectile launched from one of the Prometheus's forward tubes. The torpedo appeared as a small dot of light moving toward the distant target. When it hit, the result was spectacular. The entire rear section of the destroyer simply vanished in a flash of brilliant white light. The explosion was completely silent in the vacuum of space, but the energy release was visible even at their current distance of several thousand kilometers. Jesus, Jake Vispirited. One torpedo did that. Quantum torpedoes utilize matter-antimatter reactions contained within a collapsed space-time bubble, Athena explained. The destructive potential of a single torpedo is equivalent to approximately 50 nuclear warheads. Maria stared at the display in amazement. The destroyer had been cut cleanly in half by a single shot from their smallest weapon. She couldn't imagine what the larger weapons would do. Athena, show me what a plasma beam array can do. Targeting the remaining section of the destroyer. This time, Maria watched as one of the Prometheus's side-mounted weapons systems tracked onto the target. The plasma beam was invisible until it hit, but when it struck the destroyer's hull, the entire ship began to glow white-hot. Within seconds, the metal was liquefying and boiling away into space. The plasma beam arrays fire concentrated streams of stellar material at near-light speed. Athena explained as they watched the destroyer dissolve. The temperature at impact is approximately 50 million degrees. Elena was running calculations on her workstation. Captain, according to these power readings, we could maintain continuous fire from all plasma arrays for over 6 months without any reduction in effectiveness. Maria was beginning to understand why the ship had been hidden away. The Prometheus wasn't just a weapon. It was a force of nature. A single ship that could destroy entire fleets without breaking a sweat. Athena, I want to know more about our defensive capabilities. What happens if the enemy shoots back? The Prometheus is equipped with several defensive systems. The primary defense is the quantum shield array, which can deflect or absorb most forms of energy weapons. Secondary defense is provided by the adaptive armor plating, which automatically adjusts its molecular structure to resist incoming weapons. As a last resort, the temporal displacement field can shift the ship slightly out of phase with normal space-time, making it effectively untouchable for short periods. Demonstrate the quantum shields. Fire a plasma beam at that asteroid over there, then raise shields and fire another beam at the same spot. They watched as the first plasma beam struck the asteroid and instantly vaporized several cubic kilometers of rock. When the second beam fired, it hit an invisible barrier about a kilometer in front of the Prometheus and simply disappeared, absorbed harmlessly by the ship's defensive systems. The quantum shields are rated to absorb the equivalent energy output of a small star for extended periods, Athena noted. No known Zephyrian weapon can penetrate them. Maria felt a savage smile spreading across her face. The Zephyrians had spent 3 years terrorizing human colonies, enslaving populations, and strip mining entire worlds. They thought they were untouchable, that humanity was broken and defeated. They were about to learn the difference between winning a war and facing a force of nature. Athena, plot a course for the nearest Zephyrian patrol group. I want to send the Empire a message they'll never forget. Course plotted. The nearest enemy force consists of 6 ships patrolling the Kepler 440 system. They have been using that system as a staging area for raids on human refugee settlements. Perfect. How long until we reach them? At maximum velocity, approximately 18 hours. Maria turned to her small crew. Jake, I want you monitoring all communications channels. The moment we engage the enemy, word is going to spread throughout their fleet. Elena, I need you to study every system on this ship. If we're going to take on the entire Zephyrian Empire, we need to understand every capability we have. As the Prometheus began its journey toward the enemy patrol, Maria couldn't help but think about all the people who had died during the war. Her own brother had been killed defending the colony on New Terra. Millions of others had suffered similar losses. The Zephyrians had thought they could break humanity's spirit by overwhelming them with superior numbers and firepower. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their refusal to give up, even when facing impossible odds. The Prometheus was more than just a ship. It was humanity's anger given form, their desire for justice made manifest in quantum steel and contained singularities. The hunt was about to begin. As they traveled through hyperspace toward their first target, Athena provided detailed briefings on Zephyrian military capabilities. Their ships used energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, both of which would be useless against the Prometheus's defenses. Their shields were adequate against conventional weapons, but wouldn't even slow down quantum torpedoes. Most importantly, their communication systems were vulnerable to electronic warfare. The Prometheus carried advanced jamming equipment that could prevent enemy ships from calling for help or coordinating their defenses. "Captain," Jake called from a station, "I'm picking up long-range communication from the target system. The Zephyrian Patrol is reporting routine status updates to their fleet command. Can you intercept their communications?" "Already doing it." Athena's systems are automatically decrypting all their transmissions. They're using a rotating cipher system, but the ship's computers are cracking each new code within minutes. What are they saying? Standard patrol reports. They're checking in every 6 hours with Fleet Command. Their next scheduled report is in 4 hours, which means we'll reach them about 2 hours before they're expected to call in. Maria nodded. That gives us a 2-hour window to hit them and get away before their fleet realizes something's wrong. "Captain," Elena called from her station, "I've been studying the ship's stealth systems." "Athena, can you explain how our cloaking technology works?" The Prometheus utilizes a quantum phase cloak that renders the ship undetectable to most sensor systems. Additionally, we can mask our energy signature to appear as natural space phenomena, such as cosmic radiation or gravitational anomalies. Basically, Elena translated, we can sneak up on them and they'll never see us coming. The next few hours pass slowly as they approach their target. Maria used the time to study tactical displays of the Kepler 440 system, planning their attack. The Zephyrian patrol consisted of 6 ships, 4 frigates, 1 cruiser, and 1 heavy destroyer. In a conventional engagement, that force could easily destroy a human battle group. Against the Prometheus, they were little more than target practice. 1 hour until we reach the system, Athena announced. "Recommend we activate stealth systems and approach the enemy formation from the shadow of the system's 4th planet. Do it, and prepare all weapons systems for immediate engagement." As they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 440 system, Maria felt her heart rate increase. This would be their first real combat engagement, the first test of whether the Prometheus could live up to its incredible specifications. Through the main display, she could see the Zephyrian patrol moving in a standard formation near the system's asteroid belt. Their ships looked tiny compared to the Prometheus, like minnows swimming near a shark. "All systems green," Elena reported. "Weapons charged and ready." "Stealth systems engaged," Jake added. "We're invisible to their sensors." Maria stood up and moved to the tactical display. It was time to show the Zephyrian Empire that humanity wasn't as helpless as they thought. "Athena, target all 6 enemy ships simultaneously. I want this to be quick and decisive." Targets locked. Quantum torpedoes loaded and ready. Maria took a deep breath. Fire. /6 quantum torpedoes launched simultaneously from the Prometheus, racing through space toward their targets. Maria watched the tactical display as the weapons closed the distance to the Zephyrian patrol ships in a matter of seconds. The enemy vessels had no idea they were under attack until the torpedoes were already among them. The first frigate simply ceased to exist. One moment, it was there. The next, there was only an expanding cloud of superheated plasma where the ship had been. The second frigate lasted slightly longer, its shields flaring briefly before being overwhelmed and the ship vaporized. The cruiser managed to detect the incoming torpedo and begin evasive maneuvers, but quantum torpedoes locked onto their targets at a subatomic level. There was no escape. The weapon struck the cruiser amidships and tore the vessel apart from the inside out. The remaining 3 ships suffered similar fates. Within 30 seconds of firing, 6 Zephyrian warships had been reduced to glowing debris scattered across several thousand cubic kilometers of space. Targets destroyed, Athena reported in her calm, professional voice. No survivors detected. Enemy vessels were eliminated with 100% efficiency. Maria stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. She had expected the Prometheus to be powerful, but this was beyond anything she had imagined. 6 warships destroyed in half a minute without the enemy even getting a chance to fire back. Captain, Jake called from his station, his voice shaking slightly. I'm monitoring Zephyrian communication frequencies. Their fleet command is trying to contact the patrol we just destroyed. How long before they realize something's wrong? The patrol was supposed to check in 90 minutes from now. When they don't respond, Fleet Command will probably send another patrol to investigate. Maria nodded grimly. Athena, scan the system for any other Zephyrian forces. Scanning. I detect 1 automated supply depot on the 3rd planet and a small monitoring station on the system's edge. No additional warships present. Target both installations and destroy them. 2 more quantum torpedoes launched from the Prometheus. The supply depot on the planet's surface vanished in a flash of light that was briefly visible even from space. The monitoring station simply disappeared, leaving no trace that it had ever existed. Captain, Elena said from her engineering station, the power consumption for that engagement was less than 0.01% of our total capacity. We could fight continuously for months without any reduction in capability. Maria felt a cold satisfaction settling in her chest. The Zephyrians had built their empire by conquering weaker civilizations, overwhelming them with superior numbers and technology. They had never faced anything like the Prometheus. Athena, plot a course for the next nearest Zephyrian force. I want to keep hitting them before they figure out what's happening. The nearest significant enemy presence is a fleet base in the Vega 7 system, approximately 6 hours away at maximum velocity. Intelligence indicates it houses a task force of 24 ships, including 3 battlecruisers. Maria smiled grimly. Even better. Let's go hunting. As the Prometheus jumped to hyperspace, Maria used the travel time to study more of the ship's incredible capabilities. The manufacturing bays could produce additional quantum torpedoes at a rate of 12 per hour, meaning their ammunition supply was essentially unlimited. The ship's computers were constantly analyzing enemy communications and updating tactical databases with new information about Zephyrian fleet positions. Most impressive of all was the ship's learning capability. Athena was studying the results of their first engagement, analyzing the effectiveness of different weapons and tactics. The AI was already suggesting modifications to their attack patterns that would increase efficiency even further. Captain, Athena said as they approached the Vega 7 system, I have completed analysis of our engagement with the patrol force. I recommend we test our plasma beam arrays against larger targets. The quantum torpedoes were effective, but maybe excessive for smaller vessels. Good point. We don't want to waste our most powerful weapons on frigate-sized targets. As they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vega 7 system, their sensors immediately detected the Zephyrian fleet base. It was massive, easily the size of a small moon, with dozens of ships docked at external pylons and massive defensive weapon emplacements covering its surface. 24 ships confirmed, Jake reported. I'm reading 3 battlecruisers, 8 cruisers, and 13 frigates. The base itself is heavily armed with planetary defense cannons. Perfect, Maria said. Athena, I want a demonstration of our full combat capabilities. Engage all targets simultaneously. Acknowledged. Activating all weapon systems. The Prometheus began its attack with a coordinated barrage from every weapon system on the ship. Quantum torpedoes streaked toward the 3 battlecruisers, while plasma beam arrays tracked onto the smaller vessels. Graviton pulse cannons targeted the base's defensive installations. The effect was devastating. The battlecruisers lasted slightly longer than the patrol ships from their previous engagement, their heavier shields buying them perhaps 10 additional seconds of existence. The plasma beams sliced through the cruisers and frigates like a hot knife through butter, leaving trails of molten metal floating in space. The fleet base's defensive cannons began firing, sending streams of energy bolts toward the Prometheus. The ship's quantum shields absorbed the incoming fire without even registering the impact on their power systems. Base defenses are ineffective, Athena reported, initiating secondary bombardment. A full spread of graviton pulse cannons fired at the base itself. The weapons created localized gravity wells that tore the massive structure apart at the molecular level. Within minutes, the entire base was reduced to its component atoms, scattered across space like glittering dust. All targets destroyed, Athena announced. Total engagement time. For minutes, 37 seconds. No damage sustained. Maria walked to the main display and stared out at the debris field that had once been a major Zephyrian fleet base. 24 warships and a massive installation, all destroyed in less than 5 minutes. The ship's weapons were so overwhelmingly powerful that the Zephyrians might as well have been throwing rocks. Captain, Jake called urgently. I'm detecting a massive communications burst from the base just before it was destroyed. They managed to get off a distress signal. What do they transmit? Everything. Ship signatures, weapon capabilities, attack patterns. The entire Zephyrian fleet network now knows about us. Maria felt her heart rate increase. How long before they can respond? I'm tracking multiple fleet movements across the sector. It looks like they're pulling ships from patrol duties and colony defense missions. Best estimate is that we'll be facing coordinated resistance within 12 hours. Athena's voice cut into their conversation. Captain, I am intercepting Zephyrian military communications across multiple channels. The enemy high command is classifying the Prometheus as a Category Alpha threat and authorizing the use of all available resources for our destruction. What does Category Alpha mean? According to their military protocols, it indicates a threat to the survival of the Empire itself. They are recalling ships from across their territory to converge on our last known position. Elena looked up from her station with excitement. Captain, this is exactly what we wanted. Instead of hunting down individual ships, they're bringing their entire fleet to us. Maria nodded slowly. The Zephyrians were reacting exactly as she had hoped. By demonstrating overwhelming superiority, they had forced the Empire to commit major resources to hunting down a single ship. Resources that wouldn't be available for oppressing human colonies or expanding their territory. Athena, what's the largest fleet engagement this ship was designed to handle? The Prometheus was designed to engage multiple enemy fleets simultaneously. Theoretical maximum engagement parameters include up to 500 enemy vessels in a single battle space. 500 ships? Jake's voice cracked. Are you serious? The ship's weapons systems can track and engage over 1,000 individual targets simultaneously. Defensive systems are rated to withstand concentrated fire from an entire enemy fleet. The limiting factor would be ammunition supply, but our manufacturing capabilities can sustain extended combat operations. Maria felt a savage grin spreading across her face. The Zephyrians thought they could overwhelm the Prometheus with numbers. They were about to learn that some advantages couldn't be overcome by simply bringing more ships. Athena, Start monitoring all Zephyrian fleet movements. I want to know exactly where they're positioning their forces. Already in progress. I have identified 7 separate fleet groups converging on this sector. Total enemy strength appears to be approximately 240 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts. Dreadnoughts? Elena looked worried. I've never seen one of those in person, but the intelligence reports say they're over a kilometer long and armed with weapons that can destroy planets. Their weapons are indeed formidable by conventional standards, Athena acknowledged. However, Zephyrian dreadnoughts utilize plasma-based weapons that are vulnerable to our quantum shield systems. Additionally, their armor plating cannot withstand quantum torpedo impacts. Maria studied the tactical displays showing enemy fleet positions. The Zephyrians were being smart about this, approaching from multiple directions to prevent the Prometheus from escaping. They were treating this like a hunt, surrounding their prey before closing in for the kill. They had no idea they were the ones being hunted. Captain, Jake reported, I'm detecting some interesting chatter in their communications. It sounds like their fleet commanders are arguing about tactics. Some want to engage us immediately. Others are calling for siege tactics. What kind of siege tactics? They're talking about surrounding us and bombarding our position from extreme range. Apparently, some of their admirals think we're too dangerous for close engagement. Athena processed this information quickly. Enemy caution is understandable given our demonstrated capabilities. However, siege tactics will not be effective against our defensive systems. We can maintain shields and return fire indefinitely. Maria made her decision. We're not going to wait for them to get organized. Athena, plot intercept courses for all 7 enemy fleets. We're going to hit them one at a time before they can coordinate their attack. Acknowledged. Plotting intercept courses now. Recommend we target the smallest fleet first to minimize initial resistance. Negative. Target the largest fleet first. I want to send a message that will shake their confidence. The largest Zephyrian fleet consisted of 43 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts. According to intelligence reports, it was commanded by Admiral Krex, one of the Empire's most experienced and ruthless fleet commanders. He had personally overseen the destruction of at least 6 human colonies. As the Prometheus changed course toward the enemy fleet, Maria felt the weight of history on her shoulders. Humanity had suffered 3 years of defeat and humiliation at the hands of the Zephyrian Empire. Billions of people had died or been enslaved. Entire worlds had been reduced to ash. Today, that was going to change. Today, humanity would remind the galaxy why they should never be underestimated. Time to intercept, Maria asked. 3 hours, 14 minutes at maximum velocity. Perfect. That gives us time to prepare a proper welcome for Admiral Krex and his fleet. As they raced through hyperspace toward their next battle, Maria couldn't help but think about all the people who would never see justice for the crimes committed against them. But for those who remained, for the millions of humans still fighting for freedom in hidden colonies and resistance cells throughout the galaxy, the tide of war was about to turn. The Prometheus wasn't just a ship. It was hope given form. Humanity's refusal to accept defeat made manifest in quantum steel and controlled singularities. And it was about to show the Zephyrian Empire that their reign of terror was coming to an end. / Admiral Krex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Voidrender, studying the tactical displays with growing unease. In 30 years of military service, he had never encountered anything like the reports flooding in from across the sector. A single human vessel had destroyed 2 entire Zephyrian fleets without sustaining any damage. It was impossible, yet the sensor data was undeniable. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we have lost contact with the Vega 7 base. The last transmission indicated they were under attack by an unknown vessel. Krex's mandibles clicked together in frustration. The Vega 7 base had been one of their strongest positions, defended by 24 ships and planetary defense cannons. If it had fallen, then they were dealing with something far beyond normal human capabilities. Status of the convergent fleets, he demanded. 6 additional fleet groups are moving to intercept the enemy vessel. Total combined strength will be over 200 ships once we achieve tactical formation. Krexta felt a cold satisfaction. No single ship, no matter how advanced, could stand against that kind of overwhelming firepower. The humans had apparently built some kind of prototype superweapon, but numbers would tell in the end. They always did. "Sir," his sensor operator called urgently. "I'm detecting a massive hyperspace signature incoming. Distance 12,000 kilometers and closing fast. All ships to battle stations. Prepare for immediate engagement." The space in front of Krexta's fleet rippled and tore as something enormous dropped out of hyperspace. What emerged was like nothing in any Zephyrian database. The ship was huge, easily twice the size of his own dreadnought, with an angular black hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered its surface, and weapon ports dotted every visible section of its armor. "Mother of the Void," his tactical officer whispered. "What is that thing?" Before Krexta could respond, his communications system activated with an incoming transmission. The holographic display showed a human female in what appeared to be a ship's captain uniform. Her expression was cold and determined. "Admiral Krexta," the human said, "I am Captain Maria Santos of the UES Prometheus. You are responsible for the destruction of a new Terra colony and the deaths of over 2 million civilians. I hereby sentence you and your fleet to death." The transmission cut off immediately. Krexta felt his blood chill at the mention of New Terra. That had been one of his most successful campaigns, a textbook example of how to break human resistance through overwhelming force. He had personally ordered the orbital bombardment that reduced the colony's cities to ash. "All ships open fire," he ordered. "Concentrate all weapons on that vessel." 43 Zephyrian warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic projectiles streaked across space toward the human ship. The barrage was intense enough to destroy a small moon, but as the weapons approached their target, they simply vanished into what looked like empty space. "Weapons impact negative," his tactical officer reported in disbelief. "The enemy vessel appears to be protected by some kind of energy barrier." Krexta watched in growing horror as the human ship began to respond. Dozens of weapon ports along its hull began to glow with contained energy, and then the Prometheus unleashed hell. Quantum torpedoes launched from the ship's forward tubes, each one tracking toward a different target in Krexta's fleet. Plasma beam arrays swept across space like the fingers of an angry god, slicing through ship hulls as if they were made of paper. Graviton pulse cannons created localized gravity fields that tore vessels apart at the molecular level. The first wave of torpedoes struck the fleet's outer perimeter. 6 frigates simply ceased to exist, vaporized so completely that their atoms were scattered across space. The plasma beams reached the cruiser formation and began systematically cutting each ship in half, turning proud warships into expanding clouds of molten metal. "Evasive maneuvers," Krexta screamed. "All ships scatter formation." It was too late. The human ship's weapons systems tracked multiple targets simultaneously with impossible precision. Ships that tried to flee were caught by graviton pulses that crushed them like tin cans. Those that tried to fight were vaporized by quantum torpedoes that seemed to ignore their shields and armor completely. "Admiral," his communications officer called desperately, "we're receiving surrender requests from the Stellar Pride and the Victory's Edge. They're requesting permission to withdraw." "Denied. All ships will maintain position and continue firing." But there was nothing left to fire. In less than 2 minutes, 37 of his 43 ships had been destroyed. Only his 3 dreadnoughts and 3 heavy cruisers remained, and they were barely managing to keep their shields up under the withering assault from the Prometheus. Krexta watched his tactical display as another graviton pulse caught the dreadnought Dominion's fist. The massive ship simply folded in on itself, its hull plates crumpling like paper before the entire vessel collapsed into a sphere of compressed matter and then exploded. "Sir," his helm officer reported, "the Endless Victory is requesting immediate evacuation. Their shields are failing and their weapons are offline." Through his viewport, Krex could see the other surviving dreadnought burning in space, atmosphere, and plasma venting from multiple hull breaches. As he watched, a quantum torpedo struck the ship amidships and tore it completely in half. That left only his flagship and two heavily damaged cruisers against the human superweapon. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly. "Incoming transmission from the enemy vessel." The same human captain appeared on his screen, but this time she was standing on what appeared to be a massive bridge with holographic displays showing the destruction of his fleet in real time. "Admiral," Captain Santos said, "you have 1 minute to abandon ship before I destroy your flagship. Any Zephyrian found aboard, when that time expires, will share your fate." Krex felt his pride warring with his survival instinct. He was a Zephyrian admiral, heir to a proud military tradition that had conquered half the galaxy. To flee from a single human ship was unthinkable. But as he watched the last cruiser in his fleet dissolve under concentrated plasma fire, survival instinct won. "All hands abandon ship," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is Admiral Krex ordering immediate evacuation." The bridge crew began moving toward the escape pods, but Krex remained at his station. He was the admiral. Tradition demanded that he go down with his ship. 50 seconds, Captain Santos announced. Krex closed his eyes and waited for death. He had commanded fleets that destroyed worlds, enslaved billions of sentients, and expanded the Zephyrian Empire across dozens of star systems. If this was how his story ended, killed by the very species he had helped to conquer, then perhaps there was justice in the universe after all. The quantum torpedo that struck the Void Render was almost merciful in its efficiency. The ship simply ceased to exist, taking Admiral Krex and his proud military tradition with it. Aboard the Prometheus, Maria watched the destruction of the Zephyrian fleet with grim satisfaction. 43 enemy ships destroyed in less than 5 minutes, with 0 damage to her own vessel. It was a level of tactical superiority that bordered on the supernatural. "Captain," Jake reported, "I'm tracking the enemy escape pods. Approximately 300 survivors from the engagement." "Let them go," Maria said. "I want survivors. I want them to spread word about what happened here." "All enemy vessels destroyed," Athena announced. Fleet combat effectiveness demonstrated at optimal levels. Weapons systems performed within expected parameters. Elena looked up from her engineering station with amazement. "Captain, our power consumption for that engagement was still less than 1% of total capacity. We could have fought 10 fleets that size simultaneously." Maria nodded grimly. The Prometheus was proving to be even more devastatingly effective than she had hoped. But, more importantly, word of these engagements would be spreading throughout the Zephyrian Empire. Fear was a weapon as powerful as any quantum torpedo. "Athena, what's the status of the other converging fleets?" 6 additional enemy fleets remain in this sector, with a total of 197 ships. However, I am detecting significant changes in their movement patterns. Several fleet commanders appear to be requesting new orders from their high command. "They're getting nervous," Jake observed. "Losing 43 ships in 5 minutes would do that." "Captain," Athena continued, "I have been monitoring Zephyrian High Command communications. The enemy leadership is showing signs of panic. They are issuing contradictory orders and recalling some fleets from their advanced positions." Maria felt cold satisfaction building in her chest. The Zephyrian Empire had built their power on the assumption that they could overwhelm any opposition through superior numbers and ruthless tactics. The Prometheus was shattering that assumption, forcing them to confront the possibility that they were not, in fact, invincible. "Athena, I want you to target their communication networks. Can we broadcast a message to the entire Zephyrian fleet?" "Affirmative." I can override their secure communication channels and transmit on all frequencies simultaneously. Do it. The main display changed to show Maria's image, which Athena was now broadcasting across every Zephyrian communication channel in the sector. She could imagine thousands of alien officers and crew members watching her words on their bridge screens. "Attention, forces of the Zephyrian Empire," Maria began, her voice calm and professional. "I am Captain Maria Santos, commanding officer of the UES Prometheus. Over the past 3 years, your empire has waged a campaign of genocide against the human species. You have destroyed our colonies, enslaved our people, and committed countless atrocities in your quest for galactic domination." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Today, that ends. The Prometheus is equipped with technology that makes your entire fleet obsolete. We have already destroyed 2 fleet groups without sustaining any damage. Your weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Your ships cannot escape our targeting systems. You are outmatched in every conceivable way." Maria leaned forward, her expression hardening. "However, I am not a monster like those you serve. Any Zephyrian commander who withdraws their forces from human space will be allowed to leave unmolested. Any ship that continues to threaten human lives will be destroyed without mercy. You have 24 hours to comply." The transmission ended, leaving the sector's communication channels buzzing with panicked Zephyrian chatter. Maria could imagine the chaos her ultimatum was causing in their command structure. "Captain," Jake reported, "I'm already seeing movement from 3 of the remaining fleets. They're changing course away from us. And the other 3? Still approaching. It looks like they're going to call our bluff." Maria smiled coldly. "Then, they're about to learn that we're not bluffing. Athena, plot intercept courses for the 3 fleets that are still approaching. We're going to give them a demonstration they'll never forget." As the Prometheus began moving toward its next targets, Maria thought about all the human colonies that had suffered under Zephyrian occupation. The Empire had thought that overwhelming firepower and ruthless tactics would be enough to keep humanity crushed forever. They were about to discover that humanity's greatest strength had never been their weapons or their technology. It was their refusal to accept defeat, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The Prometheus was that refusal given form, the concentrated will of an entire species that had decided to fight back against their oppressors. The Zephyrian Empire had awakened something they didn't understand, and now they were going to face the consequences. "Time to intercept the next fleet?" Maria asked. 2 hours, 17 minutes, Athena replied. "Perfect. That gives us time to recharge our systems and prepare for round 2. As they raced through space toward their next engagement, Maria felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced since before the war. Every destroyed Zephyrian ship was a small measure of justice for all the innocents who had died. Every terrified alien crew was a reminder that humanity would never again be considered helpless. The hunt was far from over. The Zephyrian Imperial War Council chambers had never seen such chaos. High Command Admiral Vorthicay slammed his clawed fist against the holographic tactical display, sending data streams scattering across the room like digital rain. Around the circular chamber, the Empire's most senior military leaders argued in harsh, clicking voices that echoed off the crystalline walls. "Impossible," Admiral Essie Kitar hissed, her scales shifting to an angry purple coloration. "No single vessel can destroy entire fleets. The reports must be exaggerated." Then, explain the complete loss of contact with the Vega 7 base. Admiral Vorthicay snarled back. "Explain how Admiral Krex's entire task force vanished from our sensors in less than 6 minutes." The massive display in the center of the chamber showed real-time positions of all Imperial fleets. Over the past 18 hours, 3 major red indicators had simply disappeared, representing over 80 ships and thousands of crew members. The implications were staggering. "My lords," came a trembling voice from the communication station. "We have another priority transmission from Fleet Group 7. Admiral Zekmol is requesting immediate reinforcements." "Put him through," Vorthicay ordered. The holographic image of Admiral Zekmol appeared above the central display. The normally composed officer looked haggard, his scales pale with fear. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship was a chaos of sparking electronics and emergency lighting. High Command, Zekmol began without preamble. The human superweapon has engaged my fleet. We've lost 12 ships in the first wave of attacks. Their weapons they're unlike anything we've ever encountered. Request permission to withdraw immediately. Denied. Vorta Kororet. You will hold position and engage the enemy with all available force. You don't understand, Zekmol pleaded. This isn't a ship, it's a weapon of mass destruction. My heavy cruiser was cut in half by some kind of energy beam. The Dreadnought Emperor's was destroyed by a single projectile that ignored our shields completely. Before Vorthe K could respond, the transmission dissolved into static. When it cleared, only empty space remained where Zekmol's fleet had been. The War Council chamber fell into stunned silence. In 40 minutes, another entire fleet had been annihilated. The impossible had become routine. My lords, the communications officer said quietly, we're receiving priority signals from fleet commanders across the sector. 7 task force leaders are requesting permission to withdraw from human space. They're refusing to engage the enemy vessel. Admiral Sek Tar's scales shifted to a sickly yellow. Mutiny. Our own commanders are committing mutiny rather than face this human ship. Vorthe K studied the tactical display with growing dread. The red icons representing destroyed fleets formed a clear pattern, showing the human vessel's methodical advance through their defensive positions. At this rate, the entire sector fleet would be destroyed within days. Status of the Convergence fleet? He demanded. The remaining task forces have achieved tactical formation at grid reference Zeta 97. Combined strength is 96 ships, including 6 dreadnoughts. However, the tactical officer hesitated. However what? Admiral Rex is requesting clarification of engagement protocols. He wants to know if retreat is authorized if casualties exceed 50%. Vorthe K felt his pride warring with military pragmatism. The Zephyrian Empire had not built its power through cowardice. They had conquered half the galaxy by applying overwhelming force against inferior opponents. To retreat from a single enemy vessel went against everything their military tradition stood for. But the alternative was losing their entire sector fleet in a matter of days. Tell Admiral Rex that retreat is authorized if casualties reach 30%. Vorthe K ordered reluctantly. And give me a direct communication link with Emperor Malthor. He needs to know what we're facing. Aboard the Prometheus, Maria stood before the massive holographic display showing the positions of the remaining Zephyrian fleets. Athena had been monitoring their communications for hours, and the picture that emerged was one of an enemy in complete disarray. Captain, Athena reported, I have confirmed the destruction of Fleet Group 7. Total engagement time was 37 minutes. No damage sustained to our vessel. Excellent. What's the status of the main Convergence fleet? 96 enemy vessels have formed a defensive formation approximately 4 hours away at maximum velocity. Intelligence intercepts indicate their commander has been authorized to retreat if losses become excessive. Elena looked up from her engineering station. They're finally starting to understand what they're up against. 3 fleets destroyed without us taking so much as a scratch. The question is, Jake added, do we let them retreat or do we finish them off? Maria considered the tactical situation carefully. The Zephyrians had spent 3 years terrorizing human space, treating the conquered territories as their personal hunting ground. Part of her wanted to destroy every single enemy ship as payback for all the atrocities they had committed. But a larger part of her understood that fear could be more effective than destruction. A fleet that retreated in terror would spread word of the Prometheus throughout the Empire. The psychological impact of their defeats would undermine Zephyrian confidence far more effectively than simply destroying ships. Athena, Maria said, I want to give the enemy fleet one more chance to withdraw. Broadcast another ultimatum on all frequencies. Channel open, Captain. Attention, Zephyrian Convergence Fleet. Maria began, her image appearing on communication screens throughout the enemy formation. This is Captain Santos of the UES Prometheus. You have seen the fate of your comrades who chose to fight us. For fleets totaling over 100 ships have been destroyed without us sustaining any damage whatsoever. She paused, letting the weight of those losses sink in. Your commander has been authorized to retreat. I suggest you take that authorization seriously. You have 1 hour to begin withdrawal from this sector. Any ship that remains after that deadline will be considered a hostile target and destroyed accordingly. The transmission ended, leaving the space around them temporarily quiet. Maria could imagine the frantic discussions taking place aboard the enemy ships as their commanders weighed pride against survival. Captain, Jake reported, I'm already detecting movement from the enemy formation. Looks like about 30 ships are breaking off and heading away from us. And the rest, still holding position. Either they're calling our bluff or they're too proud to run. Maria felt a familiar cold anger building in her chest. The Zephyrians still didn't understand what they were facing. Despite overwhelming evidence of the Prometheus's capabilities, some of their commanders were still willing to sacrifice their crews rather than admit defeat. Athena, plot an intercept course for the remaining enemy ships. It's time to end this. Course plotted. Time to engagement. 3 hours, 42 minutes. As they raced toward their final battle with the Zephyrian sector fleet, Maria reflected on how much had changed in just a few days. When they had first discovered the Prometheus, she had been a salvage captain scraping together a living from the wreckage of humanity's defeat. Now she commanded the most powerful warship in the galaxy, capable of single-handedly reversing the course of an interstellar war. Captain, Elena called from her station, I've been analyzing our combat effectiveness statistics. Do you want to hear something incredible? Go ahead. In our 4 major engagements, we've destroyed a total of 112 enemy vessels. Our total ammunition expenditure has been 37 quantum torpedoes and approximately 4 hours of plasma beam operation. We could sustain this level of combat for literally years without any reduction in capability. Jake whistled softly. 112 ships. That's more than the entire human navy had at the start of the war. And we're just getting started, Maria said grimly. Athena, I want detailed analysis of Zephyrian fleet positions throughout the Empire. Once we finish with this sector, we're taking the fight to their core territories. Analysis in progress. Preliminary data indicates the Zephyrian Empire maintains approximately 4,000 active warships across their territory, divided into 12 major fleets and numerous smaller patrol groups. For 1,000 ships, Elena breathed. Even with our capabilities, that's going to be a long campaign. Maybe not as long as you think, Maria said. Athena, what's the psychological impact of our victories so far? Morale degradation among Zephyrian forces is significant and accelerating. Communication intercepts indicate widespread panic among fleet crews and growing dissent among junior officers. Several colonial governors have already begun requesting additional military support, indicating reduced confidence in Imperial fleet protection. Maria smiled grimly. Fear is spreading faster than we can destroy ships. The Empire is starting to crack from the inside. As they approached their final battle with the sector fleet, Maria thought about all the humans still suffering under Zephyrian occupation. Hidden colonies, resistance cells, prisoner camps, and slave worlds scattered across dozens of star systems. For 3 years, those people had lived without hope, believing that humanity had been permanently defeated. Today, that was going to change. The Prometheus wasn't just a ship. It was a message sent across the stars. A declaration that humanity would never accept defeat, no matter how overwhelming the odds seemed. 1 hour to engagement, Athena announced. All systems ready, Elena reported. Weapons charged and standing by. Enemy fleet maintaining defensive formation, Jake added. 66 ships, including the 6 dreadnoughts. They're not backing down. Maria stood and walked to the main display, watching the enemy formation grow larger as they approached. These would be the last Zephyrian ships in the sector, the final obstacle between her and complete control of local space. After this battle, the real war could begin. The Prometheus would carry humanity's fury into the heart of the Empire, systematically dismantling the military machine that had oppressed billions of innocents. Every destroyed fleet would weaken their grip on conquered territories. Every terrified survivor would spread the word that the humans were coming. 30 minutes to engagement, Athena reported. Maria settled into the command chair and brought up the tactical interface. Around her, the bridge hummed with quiet efficiency as her tiny crew prepared for battle. 3 humans and an AI against the remnants of an enemy fleet. By any conventional measure, it should have been suicide. But the Prometheus was far beyond conventional measures. It was a weapon designed by humanity's greatest minds, powered by forces that barely belonged in the same universe as normal matter. It was hope and rage and determination given form in quantum steel and controlled singularities. Enemy fleet is hailing us, Jake reported. Put them through. The holographic display showed a Zephyrian admiral, his scales a deep red color that Maria had learned indicated extreme anger. When he spoke, his voice was filled with controlled fury. Human vessel, the admiral began. I am Admiral Rextha of the Imperial Sixth Fleet. You have destroyed many of our ships, but you will find us different from those you've faced before. We are veterans of 100 battles, conquerors of 12 worlds. We will not run from a single enemy ship, no matter how powerful. Maria smiled coldly. Then, you will die with honor, Admiral. That's more than your victims got. The transmission ended. Maria turned to her crew. All weapons systems prepare to engage. Target priority is the dreadnoughts first, then work our way down to the smaller vessels. Let's finish this. Weapons ready, Athena confirmed. All systems standing by. As the Prometheus closed the final distance to the enemy fleet, Maria felt history shifting around her. This battle would mark the end of Zephyrian dominance in the sector and the beginning of humanity's return to the stars. The empire that had thought itself invincible was about to learn what happened when they awakened humanity's wrath. Entering weapons range, Athena announced. Fire at will. The final battle for the Kepler sector had begun.